So when did you make the pivot or transition from being like a paying member to work here, right? $500 you were
Yeah.
paying, to where maybe you are actually making money, and how you got into a position to run an organization, to start and run one?
Yeah. Well, I came back, and the short answer is I was working for this group called Mercy Ships, which operated a huge hospital ship off the coast of Africa. And I wanted to help them and, potentially have a job with them. And they just weren't really interested. I mean, I was this kind of crazy New Yorker. I think I was successful in that role on the ship, and I got him a lot of media. I helped him raise awareness and money through, through kind of promoting them, really. But that door just shut. So I said, all right, well, if they don't want me, um, what did I see when I was there in West Africa? And I'd spent a lot of time in dozens of villages. And the one thing that I had seen that kind of was my holy discontent, I guess, was just people drinking disgusting water. And it was related to health because I was embedded with these doctors and nurses and surgeons, and we were doing these very expensive surgeries for facial tumors and flesh-eating disease and um, all sorts of problems in a country without access to healthcare. But I learned that really two things: half the country didn't have clean water to drink, or said another way, half the people in the country I was living in were drinking dirty, contaminated, disgusting water. And then number two, the World Health Organization had said at the time, half the disease is because people are drinking dirty water. So for me, it was just kind of that jump to the question behind the question, or the root cause of so much of the sickness and suffering we were seeing, which was the lack of access to clean water. And, Justin, I've now been to 70 countries. I've been to Africa 55 or 60 times. The terrible irony in so many of these areas is that the clean water is beneath the feet. It is underneath these communities. But I saw that they just didn't have the access to the drilling equipment or the resources, the money to get that clean water out of the ground. And I said, well, I think maybe I can do that. I mean, when you see your first well drilled, it seems like one of the most simplest things. Like, why are we not doing more of this? For the cost of an expensive watch or, a really good night out partying, 300 people in a village could get clean water for the first time. So really that door shut. And I just said, well, I'm going to start a charity that helps people get water. Charity water. And that's wasn't a wildly creative idea at the time, but it was clear and simple. And I had the advantage of being 30, not knowing anything about institutional philanthropy, not knowing anything about how to run an international NGO or non-governmental, humanitarian organization. So I was just asking my friends, what do you think about water? You think people should have water? And, 100% of people would say yes. And then I started understanding why some of them were skeptical and cynical when it came to giving to charity. And then I really got excited about trying to disrupt, which is such an overused word these days, but it wasn't back then, disrupt kind of the charitable business model, which if you'd asked a lot of people, 15 years ago means we give money to a charity. We never hear anything about what happens to that money. And then the charity just keeps asking us for more money, until we eventually tell them to stop.
Yeah, and to take it one step further, I actually think the majority of charities out there are not very transparent with how much of that money is actually
Correct.
going to the charitable cause, where a lot of it's gobbled up in administrative fees and salaries and just stuff that if you really knew the financials, you'd be disgusted. Like, I search really hard to find charities that really they do the work they say they're going to do. Their budgets are good. The percentage of money raised to the percentage actually given to these causes is very high and reasonable. Like, that is, most people don't realize, like, that's a huge issue.
It is. And at the time, I remember Anderson Cooper, was knocking on the doors of some terrible charity leader, who hired his mothers and cousins and brothers and nephews and, was sending 3 cents on the dollar, if that, and keeping 97%. So the charitable trust was really low. In fact, I remember coming across a USA Today poll that found 40% of Americans just said they don't trust charities. More recently, NYU did a study, found 70% of Americans believe charities waste their money. So you're not alone in that. And I really had kind of like this really clear idea. Well, what if I could take the most common objection off the table through a new business model? And I said, I'm going to create a business structure where 100% of every donation we ever take in goes into a separately audited bank account, and 100% of that money goes to the field to build water projects. I'm then going to open up another overhead bank account, and I'm personally going to raise all of the overhead, all the staffing costs, the toner for the Epson copy machine, the office rent. All that is going to be separate from a very small group of donors or entrepreneurs or business leaders who understand there are costs to running an efficient charity, but it would never be the public's problem. I said, just from a branding standpoint, I'm going to take it one step farther. I'm going to promise in perpetuity to pay back the credit card fee transactions incurred on every gift. Let me tell you, that sounded like nothing at the beginning. This year, I think it's $700,000.
Wow.
So if you go online and give $100 on your Amex, I wish I got 100, but I get about 97. And we pay back the $3 that Amex took so we can send and track your $100 donation to the field. So the first idea was this 100% model. And of course, at the time, Justin, everyone's saying, this is a dumb idea. How will you pay for your staff? Nobody wants to pay for overhead. I wasn't sure it was going to work either. But I thought if we could pull this double audited bank account model off, it would be wildly powerful. And I could reach out to the 40% that didn't trust charities, or the 70%, and say every single penny, pound, dollar, euro, krona goes directly to the cause.